Welcome back. بالأحضان, we're talking with former special agent, FBI special agent Coleen Rowley. We're talking about the new report, 7,000 pages of detail what the CIA had done within 3-4 years. Coleen, we're talking about, let's go, this is fun, the interactive report they have, the brutal methods of underline. You can actually go and push a page and you get the number of page and based. So on what do you search? Let's say I want to find out how many waterboarding was done. So this page will tell you 14, and let's read the. Really, it's written in such like somebody was watching, and I don't know how that works. Who's writing and who's doing this, and who makes the decision? So water was being poured on him, and once of the interrogation asserted that this was because of the cold temperature of the water. Both of the interrogator also stated that El-Alawi, which was the Titani, saw he water. This is a very tedious details, and the bottom line is, let's look at how many. The bottom line, and we're talking about waterboarding was done 252 times. Stress positions, 310. Slapping, hitting, slamming, 75. Rectal feeding or rectal rehydration, 32. I don't know, how do they come up with these names? Rectal, AIT. Is this a way of cleansing those horrible crimes?
Well, no matter how graphic these words are, these descriptions, if we would have had the videotapes to actually view it, it would have been far worse.
Yeah.
Most of that information that's transcribed in this report actually came from emails. So they actually came from firsthand people who then wrote back to describe back to their superiors what was going on. It also came from later investigations. Millions of firsthand documents were provided by the CIA and later reviewed mostly by staffers and by people that were cleared. You had to be cleared to get access to these.
I mean, cleared by whom?
By our government. You have to have top secret clearance. And again, you go back to the CIA. That was one of their reasons for not getting this information out, was they're afraid that it will be used against the United States. And so they are very careful.
Used by whom? International
They didn't want it to see the public. The thing is, internationally, many foreign countries
already know this.
Where this, there you go. They already know. There were threats made on the eve of Feinstein's putting this out. There were threats. Oh, there's going to be demonstrations. There's going to be killings at embassies. None of that happened. None of that happened. Why didn't it happen? Because the people in the foreign countries already know these things.
Not only that, I think also it's a self-cleansing. They are the bad guys. We are doing these horrible things in 6,000, 7,000 page details. However, we are afraid of the reaction of the bad guys. We are having a reaction of the evil.
Right.
Most of Middle Eastern people are evil. There are a few good ones. Once in a while you run into Mubarak. It's a good one. But it's a narrative that the West always have it about the others, about the people of color. Look at the clinical name they give it to the tortures. You talk about 7,000 pages or 7,000 pages about more than 1 million words. Not the word barbaric, never mentioned.
Right.
But you have a small act, ISIS or Hamas, it's barbaric.
Right.
So there is word reserved for ISIS and the others.
Well, that's the role our mainstream media is playing. Right now, National Public Radio is still refusing to use, even though it's in the Senate Intelligence Committee's report, NPR still has a policy not to use the term torture, let alone things calling it barbaric. And their rationale is, we don't want to take sides. That's what they said. So in essence,
side of what?
By not using the term torture, they use the term.
Well, if you are on neutral,
you talk about a clinical term, enhanced interrogation tactics. If you listen to NPR, listen to the debates the last 2 days, listen to the host. The host will always call it, instead of calling it torture, they will call it enhanced interrogation tactics. Exactly what you just said. It's in order to clean it up, to make it seem like it's normal, etc.
The NPR is still a corporation now. It's, they still they have it's a corporate media like any.
But they're not. All the media, the majority of the media is siding with this whole, war, perpetual war, etc. And so they do not want the American public to really learn the very harsh reality and the truth of what's gone on. I will just say one thing. This is not in the American citizenry's interests. And so this is what people don't understand.
Exactly.
Us versus them, etc. What's happening now is that the United States, even if we do have enemies in the world, guess what? We have lost the moral legitimacy to claim that we stand for human rights. How in the heck can we lecture? China, Iran, all of these countries now have said, don't lecture us, you torturers.
Do you know who condemned the Americans and the country that condemned the American based on the report?
I don't.
North Korea.
Yeah, right.
Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And Syria.
Yeah. So you can see this idea of maintaining moral legitimacy, by the way, is actually a part of national security, and it's something that people don't recognize.
Isn't it part also of the part of who we are as Americans? It's exceptionalism.
Well,
I mean,
how can you stay proudful? I mean, that's another reason to keep this hidden.
Isn't that what happened after Abu Ghraib? Same thing with transparency, and we are.
But in Abu Ghraib, this has happened over and over. What happens is blame the little rogues at the bad apples, they call them, bad apples. Prosecute Lindy England. The difference now is that these are not just Lindy Englands that are involved in this torture report. These are fairly high-level people like John Rizzo, who was the general counsel of CIA. And the fear is, if they try to prosecute some of these higher-level CIA officials, they aren't as foolish as Lindy England just to go to prison for no reason. They are going to turn around and they're going to point fingers at the people who gave them the orders.
Exactly.
And that's why this protection is going on.
So it's not going to happen domestically. Could it happen internationally? I know you posted on your Facebook, there is a German activist lawyer is trying to go to the European Union to bring the architects of all of this. Would that happen in international court?
And in the UN, both the human rights and the torture rapporteurs have called for accountability. The European Union has to some extent. Before this, Spain, independent prosecutor Garzon was trying to do this. So what they call it is the Pinochet factor. Mm-hmm. Pinochet was not held guilty for 25 years. He just died until right before he died, exactly. Yeah. But guess what? It still is out there. And so this idea that people will not be able to travel abroad, how would you like it if you retire and you want to go on a cruise now and you want to go to Italy? Yeah. There are CIA operatives who cannot travel to Italy. So what this is doing, this is the power that the rest of the world has. They can hold their own tribunals. There's something called universal jurisdiction. Universal jurisdiction exists with these heinous war crimes. We even did it in the Nuremberg trials. Yeah. And so the law actually exists on its own, and these officials are trying mightily now. In the United States, they're not having very much trouble in controlling the media, but they are having greater trouble internationally.
Khalid Sheikh Mohammed has been waterboarded more than 120 or something.
183 times.
180. At what point you say this is not working?
Yeah, well, obviously it took them a long time, and the CIA has never, to this day, they're still denying that it didn't work. Now, what they use, if you remember this book that was written called The 1% Solution, that was Dick Cheney says, well, even if something works 1% of the time, we have to do it. Would you take a drug that the FDA found only works 1% of the time and kills you or has serious side effects 99% of the time? No one in their right mind would pursue a quote-unquote 1% solution.
Well, except the people who buy the lottery. But that's a lottery mentality. But what I'm saying is this idea that we always give ourselves a special double standard. You're talking about
complete double standard.
Yeah, we're talking about this American exceptionalism.
Yep.
Is this a sign of like a dying empire? I mean, and you know, this is a sign of an illness of our sense of an empire, sense of our power. And you know, I mean, when you shove hummus in somebody's rectum, I don't know what that means. I mean, who makes this decision? Is it like a cultural sensitivity, and this frat boys are just experienced? What are the fascination of the CIA of the Arabs' rectal? Abu Ghraib is the same thing.
You know, when you say frat boys, and everyone knows that there are some really stupid things that these immature, group dynamics cause. And that certainly there have been killings in frats because of these immaturity. You know what? It's not a lot different than in the secret CIA clubs. There's always usually somebody who's kind of psychopathic, who is a sadist, and who enjoys this type of revenge. Oh, let's point to Cheney, because Cheney is on record saying, we've got to do it to these bastards. I mean, he's basically got a very sadistic outlook. But you know what? A lot of good people, otherwise good people, now then get carried away. And I think this is just the dynamic at place. Now, somebody like Feinstein, who herself believes, for instance, in monitoring Americans, and she believes in many of the tactics of this so-called war on terror, has actually seen where this is actually going too far. And actually, it's going to be very counterproductive. When we say the empire, you know, the Romans all were exceptionalists too. And even some of our officials I've watched closely, where there are former officials who have given speeches, and they actually say, will our empire then have blowback? Is that true? Will we eventually have to reap what we sow? They don't know, but they actually ask the question. And I think some of them are starting to maybe to worry about that. Although who knows when this could actually happen. And it's actually harder for people to come to grips when they're part of the system. It might be that, like Robert McNamara, took all those years until he was 90 to realize that he had lied about the Vietnam War. It takes years and years and years for people who are involved to finally see that really they got carried away, they did wrong things.